Like, maybe don't call it a vault, because that implies that there's treasure behind it.
I hope no one else is doing a bit, but I'm doing a bit.
Daddy's got a pod.
I'm Casey Kasem, and this one's for the perverts.
Join us in our strange ritual.
That is time-traveling love smut.
I can only say horny in one season opener.
A medium amount of fun and an extra large amount of sweaty.
From the minds that brought you Giraffe and Amerisaur.
No regrets, no masters.
I got dick jokes to make, man. Leave me alone.
This is good. This is good for anyone.
This one's going to be weird. I'm very interested to see where this goes.
Hello, and welcome to Debate This, the show where no one is right, but someone is definitely wrong. In this show, we take time out of our busy adult lives to talk about comic books, video games, and how one of man's greatest struggles is that we are just doomed to have to deal with Kevin Hart's acting career in perpetuity until the heat death of the universe takes us all.
I think I've said this more than anything else on this podcast. I would love nothing else to go to the alternate reality where we kept Chris Tucker instead of having to trade him for Kevin Hart. I do. That's it.
I think that there are some people in the history of Hollywood who get mislabeled as, well, the people love this. And you know what?
Yeah.
The people don't always love this.
Sometimes people don't know what they want.
Yeah, can confirm people don't love this. I don't. So, hey, speaking of things that people don't love, we are not going to talk about Kevin Hart movies today. I do want to say that, though.
We're talking about one Kevin Hart movie.
Well, kind of. So let's get into the prompt here. Abandoned planets, a whole mess of gun variants, ancient civilizations, space capitalism. Hey, if those things are for you, then I've got some great news. Today's flavor text, thanks to the patron of Butt Thwomp Nation, Sharkbait.
Our Peter Thiel of this podcast.
Today's flavor text is diving into the franchise Borderlands. So that now makes sense why we're talking about Kevin Hart so early when we should just never talk about him at all. I'm not going to talk about the Borderlands movie. And you might say, well, Todd, why didn't you watch the Borderlands movie? Well, listener asking that question, because it's still like $30 to rent on Amazon. And I would never.
I went from like disappointed in you to solidarity with you so quickly when you gave that price tag. I was like, come on, Todd, you didn't put in the hour and a half to watch the Borderlands movie? Absolutely not for $30. You didn't.
I want to be clear. I would have, because normally renting a video is like $6 and they let you have it for 72 hours. I swear to God, it's still over $20 to rent, and that's a crime, and I'm not going to do it.
When we flew to Portland for PRG a couple weeks ago, I was guaranteed, absolutely certain, no doubt in my mind, that Borderlands would be free to watch on the plane, because 100%. That's where these movies exist in exclusivity. Not there.
Madam Web was there.
Madam Web
sure was.
Yeah.
I almost watched Madam Web again.
You wouldn't fall asleep that quickly. Yeah, so we're not going to talk about it, which is fine because the Borderlands movie is not canonical to the actual storyline. So that's how I've washed my hands of it. And I'll probably never watch that until it's free on a streaming service. But as these things go, everyone knows that you do not hunt for vaults alone. So joining me today, I have Matt. This game series is almost for him, Cole. And Andrew exclusively plays the Siren class Henderson, which those are both very, very real. And I'll explain them as we get through them. As we always do with a flavor text, Andrew, also Kyle's not here. He is hunting vaults on the planet of Pandora. It being bankrolled by the mega corporation Atlas Industries. As we do on these things,
Pandora's Peter Thiel.
Pandora's Peter Thiel. As we do on these things, would love to take a hot second to do kind of around the horn. What is your knowledge of the Borderlands franchise? Have you played these games? What do you know? We'll just kick it over to, let's do Matt.
Okay. That middle name that you gave me feels right. Borderlands is a game that every time I see it, I'm like, I should like this. But
it's so close to being for you, Matt.
It's got like 4 too many numbers and meters for you.
Yeah. And it never came into my atmosphere. So like I was a Nintendo kid when the first Borderlands games were coming out and they weren't out on Nintendo console. And my friends that had Xbox or PlayStation never ended up getting into them. And then by the time I had access to something other than a Nintendo console, I didn't really want to play Borderlands, but it always looks cool. And then I find my I don't know what the word for Borderlands, trashy steampunk, steam trash. Is that what we call this? I don't know. But the genre of post-apocalyptic trash society.
It's Wasteland. It's Mad Max Wasteland.
Wasteland is very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that other places, and I don't feel like I need a whole game of it, especially when that game feels like it isn't the whole way for me. So that's all to say, I know next to nothing other than that it looks cool. And I know the name Claptrap, and if you were to ask me to describe the vibe of a Borderlands game, I could probably do that confidently from the marketing. And that's all I've got. And I know there was a movie. I haven't seen it.
There is a movie.
We all know that there's a movie. And
for legal reasons, I also have to disclose I have not seen this movie and will not see this movie unless it's available on a Delta flight.
Yes. Yeah, listeners of this, get in the comments if you've seen the movie. I'd like to talk to all 5 of you.
Yeah, I'll see it when it's on Tubi.
I've seen 3 scenes on YouTube, and all 3 of them progressively made me least want to watch this movie even less and less and less. So I think going into this, Todd and my experience was probably about the same. Played Borderlands 1 extensively when it came out. I can't remember what combination of us. I know Sharkbait is in that group too, where we did a lot of the rating, because this game walked so that Destiny could run. It is very much a proto Destiny, where it's like, how can we take the MMO RPG model to a first person shooter, right? So it created, I mean, I guess the looter shooter genre. Sorry if this is getting into it, but this is basically defined what we now consider to be looter shooters, which is you're gonna blow stuff up and get a lot of guns. And in 2010, 2011, holy shit, this was we were so fucking in. Played Borderlands 2, really liked Borderlands 2. That is as I recall, what they tried to make a story around it.
Yep.
Solid game. I think I do remember by Borderlands 2, I was I get it. I'm good. So I don't remember putting nearly as much time into 2. And then by the time I was done with 2, I just was kind of out. I was not this is not my genre. I do not love the for the same reason that I can only sometimes fuck with Diablo. It's the get this mantle for plus 3% attack speed. I don't. That is not for me.
Yeah.
So I definitely I didn't stick with it. I currently to this day own Borderlands 3 and Tales from the Borderlands, the Telltale games. Haven't started either of them.
Yeah. Your experience is my experience.
Yeah.
I played 1 and 2 and kind of much like you jumped off. A lot. I loved 2 a lot, and I played all the way through 1. And I'll kind of talk a bit about how they changed and how they've refined and why I think it might be time to get in on 4 when it comes out seemingly next year. But I'll just jump into this and we can kind of hit those pieces as we go. So let's start first with just the history of the studio that's behind this, Gearbox. So also listeners, in the show notes, we have both an Imgur album and also I put a YouTube link to the game intros for Borderlands 1, 2, 3, and what is called Borderlands the Pre-Sequel that lands between 1 and 2. Those are the 4 Borderlands proper games. You heard Andrew reference Telltale games that also fit in there. And I will hit all the plot that comes from those. But to begin, first Borderlands game, Borderlands 1, came out in 2009 by Gearbox Software, published by 2K. So who is Gearbox Software? Because you might not be familiar with them. They're largely known for having their fingers all over Half-Life. They're just attached to that project. But they were founded in 99 by 5 people, Randy Pitchford, Brian Martell, Stephen Ball, Landon Montgomery, and Rob Hieronymus, who were all formerly developers at Rebel Boat Rocker, which was a different gaming studio that had dissolved. And Gearbox became known as the studio that would basically port games to PC, to console, or vice versa. They were always that in between company. That they were some of the biggest things. Like I said, they had already been. They had their fingerprints on Half-Life, so they helped bring Half-Life to PlayStation.
Were they responsible for Quake 64?
I didn't see
question.
that, and I do not know. I don't want to put that on them.
Wow.
Inarguably the best PC to console port ever, Quake 64.
Well, the ones that hit the high watermark, like I said, taking Half-Life to PlayStation, or taking Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, or Halo Combat Evolved to PC. Like that was Halo Combat Evolved going to
that's a good port
going
too.
to PC was like a huge thing, massive. So that studio, their first original property was a game called Brothers in Arms, a franchise that came about in 2005, and it had like 3 sequels that came out, but like, game's not for me. I didn't play that game.
I think I played at least one Brothers in Arms. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and the kids got a lot of military games in my neighborhood.
This was peak Iraq War or Iraq War propaganda.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Brothers in Arms may not have taken off, but in 2005 they started working on a new IP that ultimately became Borderlands. So the original Borderlands 1, they started working on it in 2005. It dropped in 2009. Now, much like Andrew said, the creators kind of had to figure out a fun way to pitch this game. And so a couple different quotes came up. Some called this a combination of, quote, computer RPG games like Diablo and first-person shooter games like Duke Nukem. I don't know if that's a good Venn diagram.
That is a cursed sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you had me in the first half.
Yeah, sure.
and I think the reason why they chose these things, so think Diablo, because much like Andrew said, if you played Diablo 1, we'll start with Diablo 1. It was about, you had a class, you had some skills, but you collected gear that impacted how your skills all worked. And this is a pretty like good allegory for what the game becomes, because as Diablo 2 and 3 and 4 happened, and your classes got like skill trees, that's what Borderlands did as well. The reason why I think they picked Duke Nukem as the shooter to reference is that Duke Nukem, everything is a joke. You know, you're fighting to save the babes of the planet. Sure. Like, it never takes itself too seriously. There's always this like this machismo going on. But like the difference between Borderlands and Duke Nukem is just incredibly sexist, and Borderlands leans more into like silliness. Like, there's going to be jokes about, you know, kicking a bad guy in the crotch, but then they'll move on. Like, they'll step away from that in the end.
Borderlands isn't that cringy.
Yes, Borderlands has its moments, and we'll talk about some of them, but it's not that bad. Another phrasing for this has been a quote, a role-playing shooter, or as Andrew said, a looter shooter, which like the truth lands between those two. You know, looter shooter in the sense that like as the game progresses, you find better guns. They make your guns do different things. The game kind of prided itself on like 80 million gun combinations. Which is
a lot of combinations.
It is a lot of combinations, but it's like, it's both true and a little misleading, because there's not 80 million different types of guns. There's a pistol. Now, that pistol, who's the company that made the pistol? Does the pistol do a different kind of damage? Does the pistol have a special feature? So it's like, there's 10,000 variants of this one pistol, but it's still a pistol.
But they're all just like incremental stats. Like,
And then obviously there's legendaries and that sort of thing. So like their statement's not wrong, but it's also not 80 million named guns.
Sure.
And like, so for all of this, like, this is what made the game catch on. Like, when the game came out, this is what made it good, because you weren't just collect new gun. It was collect new gun, do new thing. Like, maybe this gun, there's a type of gun that when you expend all of the ammo and you go to reload it, instead of reloading the gun, you throw it and it explodes, and a new one shows up in your hand.
Objectively fun.
Yeah, that rules.
Or you'll get grenades that, like, they don't do damage, but instead, however much damage it would have done turns to healing, and all the healing flies back to you. Or, like, a shield that when your shield expends, it explodes around you and hurts all the bad guys. it's a ton of fun because you can customize how you want to play. Like all of these characters you get are still first person shooter angle, but all the gear you get drastically changes either how you play or features and skills that your character has. It's fun, and like it's fun and it's good, and it's also not too menu-y, but it is still very menu-y. And I think that is the first strike against things that Matt Cole will not love.
Yeah,
because
we're already at 2 because there's a lot of math.
Yeah, even though you can pick up a gun and kind of like take a look at it and say, okay, this is better than what I have, you still like pick up a gun and go to your menu and do all those things. So it's not quite the most recent Marvel Ultimate Alliance, but it is still not. You're still in menus. And, you know, that's what it is.
I think the biggest reason, the biggest click in my brain, and with why I think I think this was such a huge thing at the time, because again, like there was really nothing like this that wasn't like a Diablo clone. Now again, this is, you can, you know, throw a rock and hit 3 of these,
right?
But I know Matt doesn't, but did you play Morrowind, Todd?
Yeah.
So I think one of many, I mean, Morrowind's obviously a classic, but one of the biggest like challenges that new players have is, for Matt and for some listeners who aren't familiar with Morrowind, Morrowind is a first-person RPG. It is just a straight fantasy role-playing game, but you are in first person. And because of that, you can shoot arrows and swing your sword and all that stuff. The problem is Morrowind is also based on a D&D based D20 system. What that means is every time you swing your sword, it doesn't matter if the visual is just flavor. Like it doesn't matter if you're actually hitting something, you're rolling in the background, and the game doesn't tell you that. So what happens if you're a new player and you don't know that going in? You're swinging a sword or you're firing an arrow and you're like, why am I missing? I'm hitting. Skyrim got so popular because Skyrim kind of did away with that. But this was a situation, this was a game kind of like, again, and not to tailor to Matt, but like Overwatch was in a very similar way. It, because of the first personness, it injects a level of skill that overwrites a lot of the just math. So like you can not have the best stats and still be fine if you are good enough at gun, and vice versa. You can be not super good at gun and have really good stats and be okay.
Yeah, it's the difference between, and we'll talk as we go through the games, we'll talk about the characters in there and a little bit about each one of their skills. But yeah, it's the difference between like, okay, we have the same gun and Matt is better at first person shooters. We can both shoot gun, but I've put more points into my skill tree that maybe my gun fires faster or shoots 2 bullets at once or does bleeding damage. And like, those are the things that kind of tweak everything else behind the scenes. So after Borderlands 1 had been on the shelves for a bit over a year, it had sold 4.5 million copies, making it good enough that they're like, okay, greenlight Borderlands 2, which is great news because it was already in production. So after they launched Borderlands 1, started working on 2, 1 was a pretty good success. And like, so there you go. The 2 is on its way. They're like, hey, we got to have lore. We got to have a story. And this all was just the butterfly that flapped its wings, ultimately resulting in Jamie Lee Curtis having to apologize for hot takes on superhero movies a little over a decade later, which, you know, she said while promoting her Borderlands movie that currently sits at 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. So,
oopsie daisy.
Yeah, for those uninitiated, in the Borderlands presser, she made a remark. They were all asked like how superhero franchises and Marvel's doing. And she had said it's bad and a mess, which is a wild thing to say before your own movie comes out.
She also wasn't wrong.
You can say, that's the quiet part. You would not say that, though, on a presser for a movie that the Venn diagram is a flat circle of who you're trying to get.
It is a superhero movie in a different font.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like her saying Transformer movies don't have enough storyline. Also, come see Borderlands.
Yeah.
And I don't dislike Jamie Lee Curtis. I think she's a good actress, but like she's also coming off of the Halloween remakes. Like, sit your ass down.
Also not good. Also bad.
Also objectively movies.
Yeah. So Gearbox, they've gone on to do some lesser known projects, but like Borderland has been their crown jewel. Like this IP is the thing they do. After Borderlands 1, they put out 8 more games with a couple bundles in there for like legendary editions. So I've got them listed here. Borderlands came out in 2009. Borderlands 2 was 3 years later. Borderlands Legends, which was like a collection. In 2013, Borderlands 2 Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep came out. Then in this is going to be some Final Fantasy Kingdom Hearts naming here in a second. Rough. Borderlands, the pre-sequel, came out in 2014. Tales from the Borderlands, the Telltale game, came out in 2014 as well. Borderlands, the Handsome Collection, which was a bundle, was 2015. Borderlands 3 came out in 2019. Borderlands Legendary Collection, which again has it all, in 2020. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands came out in 2022. And then New Tales from the Borderlands came out in 2022 as well, which I will highlight that one as that is the quote, like present state of the lore. Like story is caught up as of Borderlands 2022, the new Borderlands, the New Tales from the Borderlands. So like, as I talk about the chronological story, I'm going to say like 10 years ago or thousands of years ago, that is all working backwards from New Tales from the Borderlands, which is currently the quote, like North Star. And there's also a rumor of a Borderlands 4 in 2025, which gets teased in Borderlands 3 briefly.
Okay, I need to go on a tangent real quick and follow me here.
Go off, King.
Per our good friend who's not here to defend himself, Kyle's recommendation, my partner and I sat down and started rewatching Glee. And Glee came out in 2009. Correct. And I'm realizing that Borderlands also came out in 2009. I did not realize how poorly something from 2009 could age until I started rewatching Glee. And knowing the vibe of Borderlands leads me to believe that there are probably parts of this game that age like milk.
I don't know. Glee is such a monumental, glorious catastrophe in itself. Like, I think I was okay. We're gonna talk about Glee, but like, if you weren't within a 5-year age range in 2009 when Glee came out, you have never heard of that show. You have zero tie to Glee as a phenomenon. So I think like people who are like 18, 19, 20 right now who have never heard of Glee, like I think there are people who to this day don't believe that Glee ever existed. Glee was a fever dream that we all had in 2009. I think it is the exception and not the rule.
I don't really know how that's super relevant to what I said, but anyway,
I don't think Borderlands is nearly as
yeah. Let me take a stab at that real quick.
Thank you.
That from what I remember of Borderlands 1 and 2 and just the research for this, the things of Borderlands that probably did not age well are like there's definitely a good amount of comic book cleavage.
Sure.
Not like gratuitous covers of comic books, like decades before cleavage, but like a number of the characters are just very sexy women characters done in like cell shading. And like they kind of get a bit away from that as the series goes on. But I bet if you go back to Borderlands 1 and 2, it probably falls prey to the dead or alive beach volleyball physics conundrum a little bit. And then it like they realize they don't need to do that anymore. It's not going to be as bad or as tone deaf as, pun intended, Glee.
Sure. Mostly what I'm saying is that like shit from 2009 was a different time. That's mostly what I'm saying.
It certainly was.
And we, at the very beginning of this episode, tied Borderlands to it's a Duke Nukem like. Well, actually, we didn't do that. Gearbox did that. That's their fault. And Duke Nukem is a thing that we've talked about aging like milk. And so I was very curious to see if this had. But it's good to know that it didn't.
Yeah, if anything suffers from the time stamp, it's that I would never go back and play Borderlands 1. The gameplay is not as good as 2. And it only gets better with every game that comes out after that, which I think anyone would probably say that about most games. Like, no one's going to go back and play Witcher 1.
Yeah.
Granted, the difference between Witcher 1 and Witcher 3
Witcher 1
is so differently.
You can't. It's unplayable.
That's not the point.
I do want, as an exercise, I do want people listening out there, Google movies that came out in 2009, and I think Matt will maybe have proven his point. Because
I don't. It's going to be
Here we
like
go.
She's the Man.
the first one here is Road Trip Beer Pong. So yes,
Oh,
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 so
and
bad.
Stacy's mom.
Oh, okay. Well,
ugh.
I'm gonna start talking about.
Yeah,
Borderlands
let's
lore.
talk about Borderlands.
Yeah, so let's set the stage a little bit. So, much like what I think I did in the Halo lore dump, I'm gonna try and go chronologically, which is not always gonna follow the games in their release order, but largely does. But I'll highlight when it does and when it does not. So let's start thousands of years ago. This is pre-Borderlands 1 lore. So there was this brilliant society of ancient aliens called the Iridians.
Of course,
Tell me if you've heard this one before.
always are.
Ancient society of aliens called Iridians who could just create impressive technology, though they themselves are flimsy little alien boys. They, being brilliant, being flimsy, being unable to do anything physically themselves, they ultimately created these things called Guardians. No, not to be confused with Halo Guardians, and not to be confused with Halo Forerunners that created Guardians. These are different ancient aliens from thousands of years ago that created technology and then created techno-organic defenders called Guardians to protect their technology and society. They, again,
I have a question.
Guardians.
I'm raising my hand.
Hang on, hold on.
Yeah.
Guardians, again, like these techno-organic mechanical machines that they're beings that live forever. That is image 1 in the Imgur. Yes, you with the hand.
Yeah. Hi, it's me with the hand. I would like to just I'm just going to just make the guess now because I do not know any about this lore. I'm going to guess now that this ancient civilization was retconned later on in the series lore to explain one or many MacGuffins that the series had already established.
Yeah, it's not as blatant as you might want to think.
Okay.
Without knowing how much of the full story of Borderlands was locked in when they made Borderlands 1, they definitely went back and toyed with some things. So I'm going to give at least partial credit because I'm sure you're right. It is not blatant that like they had to release 18 games to retcon it all.
Yeah.
And you never experience the Iridians. Like they are gone.
Yep.
They are gone.
Yep.
We never get to deal with them. So we do, however, deal with their Guardians that stick around. So like I joked, but like, yeah, it's just kind of the Forerunner and the Guardians from Halo. Except we're not constantly wondering if we're going to run into a Forerunner that hid out and lived. They're gone. Iridians are gone. But yeah, there are some images of Guardians, image 1 in the Imgur, because, hey, spoiler, Guardians are still around. They created things that live forever to guard their shit, so they're still here. So the thing that actually sparked Iridians to create Guardians was that the Iridians, again, these like wimpy, all power, all special and intelligent alien life forms, ran into this terrible cosmic being called the Destroyer.
Sure.
The naming convention's good. And so image 2 in the Imgur is of the Destroyer.
The big lie.
That's not a great photo, but it's the like title card photo when you do finally run into the Destroyer, because like spoiler alert, you run into the Destroyer. Now, if you're this ancient, smart alien civilization, you run into this all-powerful, hungry being called the Destroyer. How do you deal with that? What do you do when you're dealing with a thing that cannot die and is going to consume everything around it? Well, you build a prison planet and you call it Pandora, and then you lock this thing on that prison planet behind a magical gate of sort that they end up calling a vault. And then you load that planet to guard all the vaults up with things called Guardians, including this massive Guardian called a Warrior. You put that in one of the vaults. And I've got a picture of just what a typical vault entrance looks like. It's image 3, which keen-eyed viewers will see that is just the Borderlands logo. The Borderlands logo is a circle with that thing. So that's why that is.
Cool.
It is not lost on me that we are again telling a similar story to Halo, where an ancient civilization found a really scary thing and trapped it behind a thing.
Yeah, it really is.
It also,
I get it.
It looks kind of like Stargate.
Kind of
Yeah,
does.
it does look like
Legally
Stargate.
distinct Stargate.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have the Iridians. Well, okay, how do you lure this like all-powerful destroyer monster to trap it onto a prison planet? Well, the Iridians, they're like, this is such a scary thing that if we all die and all of our technology is found, who knows what's going to happen? We are willing to sacrifice our entire, like the leaders of the Iridians are like, we'll sacrifice all of our people, all of our civilization to lock this thing behind an impenetrable gate on a prison planet. So we got to do that. And the Iridians are like, okay, well, we're not powerful enough to do that. So they sought out a woman named Nereid, who is a siren. Now, sirens are a thing in almost every single Borderlands game. Andrew already knows, but sirens are like psychic-powered magic women. Every siren in a Borderlands game is a woman, and they all have a variety of psychic powers, but they're like these extra special, extra strong psychic beings in the universe, and there's only so many of them. And so Nereid is the very first one. So the Iridians, and I don't have a picture for Nereid because we never see her. We only get this from like lore in the games. So the Iridians seek out Nereid, and they're like, "Hey, we need your help. We need your help. We got to lock this thing in. We're willing to sacrifice our entire culture to do it." So Nereid does that. She helps them by using their technology to sacrifice their entire society to cage the destroyer in a vault on Pandora. So she then takes all their remaining technology and hides that behind a vault on the Iridian homeworld because, oh, by the way, the Iridians made a whole bunch of vaults. Spoiler alert. Tons of vaults.
All right.
Vaults all across the universe.
Why did they need to sacrifice their entire? Is it like a spirit bomb sort of situation?
It feels like a spirit bomb sort of situation.
Okay.
It was such a strong thing that they knew they had to put their whole oomph into it, which oomph is Iridian.
It feels
life force.
Sure, and far be it from me to question authority here, but it feels as though if you're trying to protect and defend your civilization, it's not the right answer to sacrifice your entire civilization to do so. That feels counterproductive to me.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I think the hand wavy answer is that they knew it was going to be so powerful. This was the only way to trap it.
Yeah.
Yada, yada, yada. Iridians have to disappear to serve the story. Here's how they do it. A siren is so powerful that she was able to make it happen. And then the end result is destroyers trapped behind a vault on Pandora, which is great. Pandora is a uninhabited prison planet. No one's going there, so that's cool. And then, also, there are vaults all across the universe. We just don't know that yet.
And all of this is before the first game, correct?
Before the first game. This is like lore we get from like, I think I said it in the Halo story. Like you catch lore off of terminals. This is like lore off of data pads kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
The bit about, I'm sure we'll get into it, but the bit about the vaults being, they're also BT dubs, there are other vaults, LOL.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on there? Are those also destroyer prisons or?
So yes and no. So so the story is that the Iridians hid basically all of their technology behind other vaults. So they were like, we're going to go away.
Okay. So that was more of like a mass archive sort of kind of thing.
It's either monsters, guardians, or loot behind every vault.
Sure.
Maybe a mixture of the three.
Seems like no one would ever want to dig that up for any reason. So
no, it seems like no one would ever want to hunt for vaults.
Yeah, wild.
Yeah. This.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know. Look, I know it looks different, but this is Fallout, right? Like this is pretty much Fallout.
I mean, Fallout is more. Well, there's going to be pieces of Fallout coming, and it's not the pieces you're thinking about because. It is Fallout in the sense that, like, Fallout, there's a ton of vaults, and you never really know that until you suddenly know that, and every vault is an experiment with maybe stuff in it. This is more, we, as this intelligent society, knew there was a big threat. We also don't want anyone getting our dangerous toys.
Okay.
And so we're going to, like, stash those elsewhere.
Yeah, I really think... I never into you. It took you saying it, but this is Halo. This is kind of different. Halo,
and we are going to shift away from the Halo comparisons. But your is this Fallout, Matt, is more right than you realize here soon.
Okay,
so that was thousands of years ago. We're going to now jump to about 300 years ago. So humankind, and again, all of this is staged off of like the 2022 Tales from the New Borderlands working backwards. So 300 years ago, hey, humankind, they figured out space travel. We figured out how to explore the universe and the galaxy and do it quickly. And that probably won't be an issue. So for 200 or so years, space exploration is just like, it's what you'd imagine in this kind of scenario. So there's some colonization, there's venturing out. But like the biggest thing is that much like if this were to happen today, we, the people of Earth, realize there needs to be a centralized government from planet Earth that regulates space shit. Because we can't just have people going out and like colonizing moons and planets and taking stuff. So like the world is like, we got to have this figured out. We need a unified government. And they do that. And this works really great until capitalism does a capitalism.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So jumping forward about 100 years ago, there's a handful of like a dozen, maybe, mega corporations that band together to wage war against that centralized government to gain full control of space colonization. So think like suddenly if, we'll just call the one as it is, like SpaceX and Coca-Cola and Honda and like, I don't know, name 7 other Disney. Like
GE.
Suddenly if they're like, we're gonna war against the government because how dare you tell us that we can't fly a rocket to a moon and take over that. So like that's what happens.
Feels like a when, not an if.
Yeah, the more I thought about it, I'm like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
So for 40 years, these like handful of businesses, these huge names, effectively wage war against the government. And it is described as like a massive bloody war. And after 40 years, hey guys, the corporations won.
Sure.
The state did not.
That
no
pregnant
comment.
Pause was so like Citizens United coded.
Yeah. I didn't lose my spot in my notes. I was waiting for you guys to say something, but we all just nodded and agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, what is there to say? Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So mega corporations, this war happens for 40 years. So successful corporations win. Having been successful, the corporations together put together an agreement called the 30-year Accord. A deal that lasts 4 months. And so
That's funny. That's very funny.
Yeah. So these corporations band together to say, we are in control, we will do this, and then they cannibalize themselves. And so after the peaceful 4 months, which is just very funny, the groups wage war, and effectively we're left with just a handful. The 3 biggest that we are left with, which players of Borderlands will recognize these 3, Atlas, Dahl, and Hyperion.
Yep.
So these are 3 corporations that, whether they started this way or ended this way, they are all also weapons manufacturers. And so as you play Borderlands, types of guns you find are typically some of these. There's also like Jacobs and some other ones. But these are like the 3 big bads. And in various times, the Borderlands stories, you might be working for one of these 3, or you might want to work with them. But these are like the 3 corporations left standing with a couple other residual ones. And during this time of like war and hunting and everything else, people, corporations, have found Pandora, this abandoned prison, wasteland planet. And also the rumor that, hey, there might be treasures on some planets has started to get out.
If it feels like if they just would have used a different word instead of vault, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like maybe don't call it a vault because that implies that there's treasure behind it.
Yeah, maybe don't call it vault. That would be probably for the best. So we move up to about 30 years ago. Enter a character named Typhon de Leon. He is the very first vault hunter.
This guy looks like shit.
Yeah, so he is Image 4, getting ahead to that. But so Typhon, in all this exploring or whatever, had ended up stuck on Pandora, but managed to escape to a planet named Promethea, where he ended up finding a vault. Like, throughout this game, you're going to see a theme of, like, we got to find the vault.
Right.
And it's always either we got to find the vault or some idiot finds it accidentally. It's never anything in between. It's either the quest to find the vault or oops, vault. And so
Sure.
Typhon finds a vault. He finds one of the vaults hidden by the Iridians. And so instead of claiming the vault for himself, he ends up selling off the knowledge and the of that vault to the mega corporation Atlas. He basically says, to the highest bidder goes this vault. You can have it. I found it, but you can have it. And Atlas, what's that?
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So Atlas opens the vault, and this is not one of the scary ones that has monsters in it. There's just Iridian technology. And so
fuck.
Atlas becomes like the dominant force in the galaxy, 30 years ago from the time we're at, because they now have Iridian powered, guns.
Right.
So Atlas is like king of the universe right now. And so
that's the gold. Then thus begins the gold rush.
Yes, thus begins the gold rush is very good. That Atlas found it, and now they know these things are out there, and we got to find them. And it's worth noting, the first vault they find, a very good vault.
Yeah.
Very good vault with good
so.
vault things.
Yep.
That's first taste is free.
First taste is free. No repercussions here. And so Atlas, they contract out Typhon. They're like, hey, you're the vault hunter. We need you to find more vaults for us. And so he doesn't. He effectively, he effectively like completely bails. He jumps off the planet. He goes hunting for what is the original Iridian homeworld, because he's like, listen, if there's more stuff, I'm going to find it. It's probably going to be there. And in that process, he settles down with a partner. He has twins. His partner tragically dies shortly thereafter, and he lives the remaining years of his life as we know them, raising these twins.
Whoa. He's like Tom from MySpace. He got his money and he fucked off.
He just bounced. And we will talk more about those twins and Typhon later. But that is the pre-story of the very first Vault Hunter. And as I said, Image 4 is Typhon de Leon, the first Vault Hunter. He's just a little guy.
He is just a weird little guy.
I'm gonna not ignore the nod to Ponce de Leon. I'm assuming that's what that is. Yeah,
I would assume so, because Ponce de Leon, the explorer that found Florida.
I
Maybe
I don't have Google
Don't
up.
know.
Okay, yeah. There's a lighthouse.
I'm not up on my conquistador facts.
The Ponce de Leon Inlet in Florida.
I'll come back to me.
Yeah, that one's just for daddy. So let's go now. 13 years ago. 13 years ago, when Borderlands 1 came out. Again, from timestamp of 2022 with the new Tales of Borderlands. 13 years ago from there, Borderlands 1 came out in 2009. We start that game off with our 4 Vault Hunters who are seeking out to find fortune, and they are also the first 4 playable Vault Hunters we get in Borderlands, the series. We have Roland, the soldier, Lilith, the siren, Mordecai, the hunter, and Brick as himself. That's how they introduce them. All 4 of these characters are in Image 5. And so let's take a brief second to talk about these characters. So in Borderlands, every character has 3 skill trees that kind of specialize who they are, and they all have some sort of a gimmick as well. Gimmicks change, skill trees make their gimmicks work differently. Roland is the soldier. He can throw a turret out, I think. Lilith as a siren, and I already talked briefly about sirens before. They all have psychic powers. Lilith can phase in and out, and when she phases out, she runs really fast. When she either disappears or reappears, she explodes and does other stuff. Lilith is very rad. Mordecai was who I played. He's kind of a sniper, but his big thing is that he has a weird alien bird that he can throw out, and it attacks.
Is that alien bird? I thought it was just a bird-ass bird.
I didn't think it was a normal hawk, but maybe it is.
Fair enough. I don't remember.
It dies in Borderlands 2, which is heartbreaking. Spoiler alert for a game from 14 years ago. And Brick, his whole thing is 2 things. He specializes in explosions, and you can also activate his ability to just start throwing punches. Which
he just punch.
And his punches explode if you specialize them right. And it really, here is the limitation. Borderlands 1 had the least customizable skill trees, and it just suffers compared to the other ones. So honestly, punching and explosions are probably the 2 worst forms of dealing damage in Borderlands. So Brick is a gimmick and not a great one.
Cool.
I remember I loved playing as Lilith because her other thing was you could juice all her elemental damage. And elemental damage is huge in these games because as Todd mentioned before, you get ice guns and fire guns and poison guns. And Lilith becomes like a damage over time specialist.
Yeah.
Which was, again, like a very novel concept at the time. It was like, oh, I can apply all my dots while I'm playing a first person shooter. Like,
Yeah.
if you're that kind of freak, then welcome home, baby.
And here's where again, like some of those grittier details, probably not the thing that Matt you would love. But the good news is, like, for most of these games, most of these characters, if you can clear the lowest version of that hurdle of like, I want to do fire damage, I need guns that shoot fire. Like if you're willing to clear that low hurdle to be like, I don't care about maximizing the damage I do, but my thing is going to be shooting fire gun. Oh, fire gun, found it. Cool. I just press buttons, I play game, I do game well. And again, like every area is like procedurally created and there's levels and you know, you get experience and you can respec your character to play differently. It's all just variants of like, how deep in the sauce do you want to get? Like, are you cool with your character being a lot of fun to play? Or are you trying to tweak it to be like the absolute best version of the character you're going to play?
Cool.
So, which, like, again, these characters are not nearly as tuned and fun and specialized as the ones that follow. So you step off the bus. It's driven by a guy named Marcus, who you never really find out like who Marcus is working for. The only background you're getting is like you're a vault hunter, you're hunting vaults. And you find Marcus like throughout the game. He's a constant NPC. But as you step off the bus, you get this like spectral voice that talks into your brain. It is a pixelated blue woman voice. And no, it's not Cortana. And that's the last Halo reference that we have. It's a voice of this being that calls itself the Guardian Angel. And it's like, hey, I'm going to help you find the vault as this like non-earthly, non-physical being. But hey, there's also going to be a physical guide for you. Oh, here it comes now. And out of nowhere shows up this robot named CL4P-TP, also known as Claptrap. And that's Image 6. That's Claptrap. Everyone knows Claptrap, voiced by Jack Black in the Borderlands movie that no one has seen. There's Claptrap.
Am I remembering correctly that the Guardian Angel was like full motion video? Whereas like
something like that, yes.
Yeah.
Really?
It's very jarring because like the rest of the game, if you're not looking at these images, is like cell shaded. Like very like 3D comic book. So it's very cartoonish.
Correct and good call out. Yeah, it's like a full motion video, like put on your HUD, kind of shows up out of nowhere. So Borderlands 1, Vault Hunters run a bunch of errands. You do a bunch of stuff around Pandora. You meet tons of wild NPCs that like constantly resurface over the games, just kind of fun. But you are searching for that vault, and you receive guidance from from that Guardian Angel until you find a piece of that vault key. So you're like, hey, I found a piece of this thing that opens the vault. That's rad. Finding that piece gets you noticed because suddenly it's a really big deal that you found this thing that people are looking for. And you get the attention of a scientist named Dr. Patricia Tanis, who tells you that there's a vault nearby, but it can only be opened every 200 years. Good to know that 200 years is coming up pretty quick, though, conveniently. So an image of Dr. Tanis is in Image 7 in the Imgur.
She looks like Liza Minnelli.
She does kind of look like Liza Minnelli. So Dr. Tanis is like, you got to go find other pieces. But, oh, by the way, when you found that piece, it kind of set off a signal. And now all the mega corporations are going to be aware that you're doing this. Like, you're not down low anymore. And because of that, the Atlas Corporation sends an enforcer to follow them, captures Dr. Tanis, follows them into the entrance to the vault that they find, and tries to take whatever is going to be in that vault for themselves. So again, there's a name of the person from Atlas. It does not matter because as they open the vault, they find the big arch. They go to open the vault, and hey, remember how a vault on Pandora had been the prison for a thing called the Destroyer?
Sure do.
Yeah, so they open this vault with the key, and suddenly, like, tentacles start flying out of the vault and impale the Enforcer and destroy all the Atlas guards that are with them. And this tentacle eldritch horror monster emerges and is like, hey, everyone, I'm the Destroyer. This was a bad idea. And so you, the Vault Hunter, your team, you manage to fight off the monster. You get it to retreat back into its like holding cell in the actual like vault itself. And the game ends by revealing that Guardian Angel full metal full video motion eyes blue creature has actually been someone from an Hyperion satellite in outer space that's been circling Pandora, but saying, hey, good news is vault's sealed for another 200 years. So like,
Did it.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We also get a post-game scene where that same satellite blasts some relay to Pandora, and it shoots a beam into that claptrap that we met earlier, activating him like a Russian sleeper agent to become interplanetary ninja assassin Claptrap. And that is Image 8.
What?
I completely forgot that this happened.
Same.
But we're going to come back to it because that's how this always works.
I think this best embodies the humor, at least of the early games. Like,
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Matt, when you said like, does this age like milk? I think the biggest, like the most 2009 of this game is it's like lol random internet humor.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Which like, again, at the time was the time.
Yes.
I think like, see also Chuck Norris jokes. That's like the level of comedy that we're at right now.
You really got me with lol random. That places it properly.
Dope.
And to underline what I said earlier, when I said, Matt, this becomes more like Fallout than you might realize, is that Fallout has followed this same equation of mega corporations kind of survived.
Yeah.
Because they were maybe behind the bombs dropping. We're not clear on that lore. But it's like you always see Poseidon Energy and Robco and all that stuff in the Fallout universe. Here, it's just Atlas, Hyperion, and Dahl. Those are like the big three.
Sure.
So tons of these games have DLC. A lot of the DLC is not relevant. I'm going to highlight the non-relevant pieces very quickly and some of the relevant stuff faster. So in Borderlands 1, I think we got 4 pieces of DLC. The very first one is the zombie island of Dr. Ned. And you got to think, this is 2009 or so. COD zombies was everywhere. People they needed their zombie fit. So the fun part is that the story stars the evil twin brother of Dr. Zed, a doctor named Dr. Ned, that is seemingly just Dr. Zed with a mustache over his surgical mask.
That's fun.
Like,
It's really
again,
good.
a little random.
Yeah.
Story's not relevant. Zombie mode. You also get Mad Moxie's Underground Riot. It is an arena battle mode sponsored by Mad Moxie as she tries to find her 4th husband. No lore, just more stuff.
If I recall, Mad Moxie is definitely the most egregious use of the boobles, correct?
Yes, heavily pixelated cartoon. Some of these character models gave cosplayers some wild things to work with.
Sure did.
So the third DLC, The Secret Armory of General Knox, this actually did give us something. It introduced a character, Athena, who is a former Atlas assassin. So the Atlas Corporation had hired her as an assassin and then tricked her into killing her own sister. And so not cool with the Atlas Corporation anymore is Athena, this former assassin. That DLC, The Secret Armory of General Knox, ends with Atlas and Dahl effectively leaving Pandora wide open for Hyperion to roll in. They take their fight elsewhere. Now, remember how Claptrap is an interplanetary ninja assassin?
Sure.
So
Gotta get the payoff on that. So the 4th DLC was Claptrap's new robot revolution. And so he's an assassin now, and he sparks a violent robot takeover on Pandora that is fueled by Hyperion. And so Hyperion had the chance to sneak in. They're doing it via a Claptrap robot revolution. Also, all the bad guys are like middle managers for Hyperion. So it's like just Hyperion goons somewhere in the hierarchy that are just forced to be on Pandora. You defeat it. It's fine. You move on. So 11 years ago is when we get Borderlands, the pre-sequel. That's that 2014 area. So the pre-sequel, the reason why they call it that is because it lands after the first one before the second one. So like
Cool.
Lion King
leading
1.5.
up to 2.
Lion King.
Yeah, it's Lion King 1.5. Andrew has played Borderlands 2, so this is not going to be a ton of surprising new information, but for those who have, the pre-sequel came out after Borderlands 2 was made, but lands story-wise before Borderlands 2 to help contextualize some of the doings of Borderlands 2. So this game exists just to provide this like fun context, and it is also given from the context or from the perspective of Athena, that Atlas assassin that we just met. And it's told in a series of like flashbacks from her perspective. So General Knox of the Atlas Corporation from, that DLC, he's dead. And now Athena is running around Pandora with a group of some other Vault Hunters. And so we are going to get Athena, the Gladiator, Nisha, the Lawbringer, Wilhelm, the Enforcer, and Claptrap, the Mistake. Those are your 4 playable characters.
That's fun. You can play as Claptrap. That's fun.
Yep. Image 9 shows you all 4 of those people kind of in that order, with Claptrap being up front. Yes, you get to play as Claptrap. Back to your critique of like lol random, that's all of his bits.
Yeah.
All of his stuff is like the whole thing.
He's Invader Zim.
He's Invader Zim. Athena and her crew, they're going to take a contract.
That was a visceral reaction from Matt.
We don't need to talk about Invader Zim anymore today. Thanks.
There's a really good chance that Claptrap pulls out a spork at some point. Who's to say? Yeah. Athena and her crew, they're going to take on a contract from a guy named Jack to help hunt a vault on a moon of Pandora. That moon is known as Elpis. Elpis is how I've spelled it. Doing my hardest to not pronounce piss in that sentence, but Elpis is the moon's name. Now, you get those 4 people, but you also get 2 other DLC Vault Hunters you can play. 10, or Image 10 shows you one of them. Let me start this. Image 10 shows you Jack, the guy who is like sending you on this mission. This is the Jack as we currently know him. Now, in Borderlands 2, you meet Jack again, but he's known as Handsome Jack. Yeah. He is not yet Handsome Jack. This is Jack. We also get 2 other playable DLC characters, Jack the Doppelganger, which is a body double of Jack, and Aurelia the Baroness, who Aurelia has like ice powers, which is pretty cool. And she's an NPC, sister of an NPC we see in the future. So this is the first, chronologically at least, DLC Vault Hunters we get. I did not play this game. I could not tell you a lot about the different powers of these people. Athena has a throwable shield a la Captain America. Nisha is like an Ash spinoff kind of situation, like Lawbringer, gun, what have you. Wilhelm is really, really neat because as you level him up, he replaces parts of his body with technology. So he becomes more robot than man the more you like level him up. And Claptrap just lol random powers. Jack the Doppelganger, he makes copies of himself while he's like playing, which is kind of cool. And Aurelia has ice powers, which is neat.
Cool.
So the crew, they make it to that moon. They meet some NPCs, including former playable characters from Borderlands 1, Roland and Lilith. They come back quite a bit. Like you get to see your old characters coming back being NPCs, which is cool. Mm-hmm. They make their way towards the vault that they're supposed to find. They face off with a bunch of those guardians that are like, hey, these things only come around when you're near a vault. And also, it was suspect that they were supposed to be in the vault to defend the vault. So it's weird that these are not in the vault. Well, we find out the vault's already been opened.
Beans.
Someone's already found the vault. It's open. When we find that out, Jack, the current benefactor, he does not take that information well. Jack, the NPC, our benefactor, we see him do like a heel turn and shoot someone in the face when he finds out that the vault's already been opened, that he's not there. Perhaps indication that that Jack's not a good dude.
Yeah.
So
it feels like it didn't take a lot. Like that's unfortunate news, but like feels like he was just waiting to break bad.
Yeah. Well, and we're gonna come back to that. Again, chronologically, in this 2009, wherever we're at, 2011, we don't know that Jack's not a good dude until this starts happening.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
So they do get into the vault, and they find this like mysterious floating vault logo artifact. And Jack's pissed. Like, I came to this vault. There's nothing in here. What's going on? But he's not so pissed that he won't touch the mysterious floating artifact. He gonna touch it. He's gonna touch the weird artifact. When he does, he is suddenly just bombarded by like psychic visions of this nightmarish destruction from a vault, monsters in a vault, all of this like really overwhelming, horrible looking stuff. And he's like freaking out while it happens. Lilith, the siren from game 1, is like, fuck this. This dude is unhinged. And so she punches through the artifact and punches him in the face.
Nice.
Leaving Jack with this artifact Borderlands emblem scar on his face. Image 13 is of Jack wearing his new mask that he now wears forever, as he is now known as Handsome Jack, because he covers up his scarred face with this like
You got a face on a face.
or a face on a face. Yeah,
It's weird. It's always weird. It never is never not weird.
But this is all. Go ahead.
I thought that you had labeled the pictures incorrectly because I was like, what do you mean a mask? But until Andrew said face on a face, now I get it.
Yeah.
Face on a face. Yeah. The whole bit here is that in Borderlands 2, Handsome Jack is the bad guy. So this is the origin story of Handsome Jack becoming the bad guy from a game they put out afterwards to set beforehand.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so there's one DLC for this. The DLC is Claptastic Voyage. And so,
Of course it is.
Yep, it is the story of how then Jack, as he is becoming Handsome Jack, does a swift takeover of the Hyperion Corporation.
That's what they called the Navy's Fleet Week in the 50s.
the Claptastic Voyage.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, right.
It's a
You got
thinker.
me.
It's a
Yeah, I'm
thinker. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
you.
So, in similar Borderlands fashion, Handsome Jack finds out, hey, there's a MacGuffin, and I need it. Terrible news, though, it's stuck inside Claptrap, which is like not a ploy that only happens once in this series.
Right.
And to make this short, they do a magic school bus, and they shove the Vault Hunters digitally into Claptrap to go get it. They explore Ralphie's body by turning him digital and shove him into Claptrap.
All right.
Sure.
Yeah, so they do that. They find it. He seizes power. He ultimately kills the CEO of the Atlas Corps to try and destabilize them, the Atlas Corporation. He kidnaps our science friend from earlier, Dr. Tanis, and thus that sets up the story for Borderlands 2. Again, this whole game was the setup to like how Handsome Jack turned evil and became the bad guy, but also like gives us some fun like, hey, what are these NPCs doing? Where'd they come from? Stuff, which is actually kind of cool. At the tail end of this, we find out this has all been from Athena's perspective in a flashback, and she is captured by the Borderlands 1 heroes that we met in the first game, and she's being lined up for a firing squad, and that's how this game ends. Cool. So we go 10 years ago, Borderlands 2. Now, it turns out that when those Vault Hunters opened up that vault a few years back, wouldn't you know it, it released a bunch of energy and precious materials called iridium, and now everyone is like, we know this exists, and people are now trying to find this rumored Warriors Vault, the Vault of Warriors. So, Handsome Jack, he's the bad guy of this game. The intro shows it all off. He hires some new Vault Hunters, and he's like, hey, you're going to go Vault Hunt for me. And then he immediately turns on him. Immediately does the heel turn in the intro screen. And we hear CeeLo Green's song, like, this ain't no place for a hero, as like the bad guys from Hyperion, the robots from Hyperion that Jack now controls, are trying to kill him. And so we meet our new series of heroes, our new Vault Hunters for Borderlands 2. We have Maya, who's another siren, Salvador the Gunzerker, Axton the Commando, and Zero the Assassin. We also get 2 DLC characters, Gage the Necromancer and Krieg the Psycho. Those are all in Image 14.
I'm going to need you to tell me more about Necromancer.
Yeah, would love to talk about Necromancer.
It's kind of exactly what you think what it sounds.
Yeah,
I just want to hear Todd say it with his human mouth.
Yeah. So when we played Borderlands 2, I first played as Zero a little bit, but then I played as Gage. I like Gage a lot. So Gage is...
I played as Maya.
Yep, as the Siren. Everyone has their bit. And so to run through them real quick, and I'll get to Gage. So Maya's big thing is that her siren power is like a force lock. Like she can hit someone with like siren powers to lock them down and make them take extra damage or render them incapacitated. I think she can also mind control. It's like a whole thing. She's great. Salvador the Gunzerker, his special ability is basically put second gun in second hand and shoot two gun at once. He is often viewed as like, from all the power output of all the heroes in all the games, Salvador's the one, because you can specialize your guns. Suddenly you're shooting two guns at once in a game that primarily talks about shooting guns being efficient. It's Salvador the Gunzerker. Axton the Commando is just different Roland. He throws a different turret. It's original.
You need a Soldier 76 in everyone.
Yeah,
every
76,
that's needs a gun guy.
Yeah.
Zero the Assassin is like part sniper, part invisible assassin that can run around. Gage the Necromancer. So Gage's special ability is Gage creates a robot sidekick that just like hovers around and shoots and stabs and does a bunch of extra shit. Like I love classes that give you a pet. I think that's a ton of fun. And so Gage the Necromancer, your buffs can either be like Gage does more damage or your Necromanced robot does more damage, which like you're going to buff the robot. You're going to buff the robot. You're going to send it into the fight. You're going to do that whole thing. And then Krieg the Psycho. So psychos are characters you see all through Borderlands. That's him. You have one of those now on your team. Big hulking guy, rampages around, throws axe, does damage. We'll come back to Krieg later when you least expect it. But he doesn't seem like he has a lot of depth other than a psycho that like turned to the good side. But Krieg's got some depth we're coming back to. So the train that you're on, that Handsome Jack put you on, it crashes, and wouldn't you know it, you're found by a claptrap. Claptrap, it's that same one.
Not the ninja assassin, the one from pre-sequel, right?
It might be.
It
I don't
matter.
know. All claptraps aren't the same claptraps, but story-wise, they might be. Who's to say?
Yeah. Got it.
You also get that same disembodied voice, the Guardian Angel from Game 1, only now just going by Angel. So your characters meet up with Lilith and Roland again, the two of the protagonists from Game 1. And they are kind of sent on their way before they're ambushed by this like giant half machine. Actually, it's like 3/4 machine, 1/4 man, who like throws a bus off of himself and tries to kill you. And he introduces himself as Handsome Jack's right-hand man, and he's known as Wilhelm, which is one of the characters you can play as in the pre-sequel. So here's kind of like when you've played Borderlands 2 and you know Handsome Jack is the bad guy and Wilhelm is his right-hand man who's more robot than man. Then you play the pre-sequel and you see why Handsome Jack became bad and that Wilhelm, at the end of that, decided to side with him. So kind of a fun little like callback.
Yeah.
Even though when you kill Wilhelm, you're like level 14. So it kind of feels bad. You're like, oh, you just died from that. Like that sucks.
Yeah.
So through exposition, we find out that this angel that's been helping us is a powerful siren. Oh, and also it's Jack's daughter and she's imprisoned. And so, yeah, she shares
the same one, right?
From
one, the same angel from one. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that Angel is a siren in prison and Jack's daughter.
So has she been? She's been in prison since before Jack like took over Hyperion.
I think that when yes, I believe yes. I believe that to be yes.
Okay,
we're gonna go with yes.
I mean,
everything that I read didn't really dive into that, but the timeline would force it to be so.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Jack's power hungry dude didn't totally do the heel turn, but here's this. So, wouldn't you know it, she shares where she is and that she has the vault key that they need. But her dad is using her as a conduit to supercharge it to try and open up the Warrior's vault. And so they find her. She says, hey, to to stop my dad's plan, you have to kill me. Like I need to die. Like you gotta take me out. And they do it. She ends up dying. But in the process of trying to accomplish that, we do see that Jack shoots Roland, one of the characters from the first game, through the chest.
Oh, bang.
And captures Lilith. It's like a whole exchange that's really, really terrible. So Jack, now that he's captured Lilith, who's another siren, he substitutes his daughter's power with Lilith's power, opens up the vault, releases what is known as the Warrior, which, wouldn't you know it, giant monster in that vault.
Yeah.
And the heroes have to ultimately destroy it, and then you get to shoot Handsome Jack out of like the cutscene. So like you fight the monster, and Handsome Jack's just like standing in front of you, and you're like, you get to pull the trigger to be like, you're dead, get out of here. And so when you kill Handsome Jack, that releases Lilith, and then suddenly this like massive universe map opens above your heads, revealing that, there's vaults all across the universe.
Oh, beans.
No.
We didn't know that until this moment, but now we know it, and that seems problematic because the 2 we've opened have been very bad.
Yeah.
So who's to say?
1 for 3 so far, right?
Yeah, the very, very first one had the good stuff. It's not a good average if you're opening up Easter eggs and one has Reese's, the other 2 has poop.
It's hard when you hit the ceiling on the first run, and then you're just hitting whammies from there. That's rough.
Yep. So Borderlands 2 had a bunch of DLC. A lot of it pretty irrelevant, but still fun. Mm-hmm. So the first one, Captain Scarlet and her pirate's booty. No real story here. You're the vault hunters still. You get hired to find some treasure, and you get double crossed, and you kill Scarlet.
That name is a Simpsons episode. Like it has to be.
Right. It feels like it.
Yeah.
Mr. Torg's Campaign of Carnage. We've talked about Mr. Torg on this podcast before.
We have.
Yeah.
It's been 5+ years, but we have.
Yeah. He's the one that kind of sounds like Macho Man. That's his whole shtick.
Sorry, I was going to say.
No, you go ahead.
This is the property that also spawned the board game, the Borderlands board game that recently came out. That is not great.
I believe that.
Board Gamerlands.
Board Gamerlands. It is something arena of badass arena or whatever. But it's this. It's just like you do the Dead of Winter, like you fight stuff on a map on a grid and you get items, and it's rough.
Well, and again, Torg is one of the brands of guns you can get. He's not Atlas, Hyperion, or Dahl. Anyway, the short of this is that a new vault is found in the, quote, badass crater of badassitude, which that's the humor that we're dealing with here. Mm-hmm. This game is a boss rush. That's all it is. Because to open up the vault, you have to do all this stuff and defeat all these people and yada, yada, yada. I don't even think anything important happens when they open the vault because I don't remember it. And I played this DLC. Sir Hammerlock's Big Game Hunt. So no story here. You're just hunting really big wild animals. And I think there's some like nameless NPC bad people. But also, Sir Hammerlock is the brother of Aurelia the Baroness from the pre-sequel. So it's a fun little connection that you find out. The important pieces of DLC / the game that came out right after this all involve Tiny Tina. So you meet Tiny Tina. She's this like erratic, manic pixie dream girl in Borderlands who has, quests and stuff. The DLC, Tiny Tina's Assault of Dragon Keep, is that Tiny Tina's getting her friends together to play Bunkers and Badasses. That is the Borderland version of Dungeons and Dragons. Mm-hmm. And
this is also a time in which Community was very popular.
Yes, 100%. It pulls straight from that. And so you are basically transformed or transported into this mythical world where you are still playing your characters, but you're following a D&D storyline. What you find out, though, is that the main NPC character friend you have is Roland, the White Knight. So like Roland, who died in Borderlands 2, you find out that like Tiny Tina is processing her grief and mourning the loss of her friend by making him the hero of her D&D game, and is inviting her friends over to like play that game with her as she tells the story of how Roland, her very good friend who is now dead, defeats Handsome Jack in this universe. And like,
that's fun.
It's kind of wholesome that like you don't understand that until the game is played, and you're like, oh shit, you're processing your loss. Huh.
Tiny Tina was Ashley Burch, right?
Ariana Greenblatt.
Yeah, after you get to, I didn't look up all the voice actors, but after you get to
said
about
voice
this,
actors. I went to the movie. My
Yeah,
bad.
no,
I
no,
forgot
no.
we were talking about that today.
Oh,
The
my bad.
original voice actor of Tiny Tina was Ashley Burch, who we talked about in the Mystic Quest.
Yeah, I don't touch on the voice actors for some of these until the Telltale games, but there are big names attached to this franchise after you get through this.
Yeah.
So that's Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, which is DLC. And so then the actual game, Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, was like a standalone game. And that it is, again, you doing the same thing. You're playing Bunkers and Badasses, but it is you playing a character named the Fate Maker, I think is what it is. And you have two friends you're playing D&D with. One is a dude named Valentine, who's voiced by Andy Samberg. So there's a big name. And then your other person that's playing Bunkers and Badasses with you is a robot named Fret that's voiced by Wanda Sykes.
Wild.
The villain of your D&D game is a character named the Dragon Lord, who's voiced by Will Arnett.
What in the world?
Of course.
Yeah. In the story, you find out that effectively the Dragon Lord, Will Arnett's character, used to be a character called the Dragon Knight, and it's Tina's old character that in her head turned evil, and she doesn't know how else to process that other than to bring her friends in to stop him. And I don't know, effectively the moral of this is that like everyone uses TTRPGs to process their grief and their emotions and try to be a whole human.
Hoops Among Us.
Whomst among us.
Whomst among us.
So that gets us up to 2013.
Okay.
We're going to take a brief break. When we come back, we've got one more true to form Borderlands game and two games made by Telltale that kind of more populate the world with plot. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey all you journers out there, this is Journey Sitwell. If you're new to this channel, we're all about searching out the mysteries of the supernatural and trying to disprove what doesn't sit well with us. On today's special episode, I thought we could do a little introduction to the members of my new investigative team. Let's get started with my friend Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hi. My name is Dan Ryan, and I go to college, and that is all, and I am normal. Can you get the camera off me, please?
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Dan. And this is Mordecai.
Yo, what's up, dude? Is it cool if I burn for this?
Okay, look, Mordecai, I don't want to get demonetized. Can you please just put that away right now, please? Stop.
Yeah, one sec. Okay, what's up, everybody? I'm Mordecai Spellbridges, and I'm a friend to magical creatures and beings alike, including Dan, my best friend.
Great! Thanks, guys. And now for the sponsor of this week's episode. This week's sponsor is, Memester of the Week.
Memester of the Week is a Monster of the Week actual play podcast starring these three weirdos as they go investigate strange happenings and fight what goes bump in the night.
You can find Memester of the Week wherever you listen to podcasts, if you're a podcast person. That's all for today's video. How does that sit with you? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more spooky content, and hit that bell to be notified whenever I release a new spooky episode. See ya!
All right, so we're back. So, catching up with the timeline, we are now 9 years prior of the new Tales of Borderlands that, came out in 2022. And that is because now we're going to get the Tales from the Borderlands, which was the first Telltale outing in the Borderlands universe. So, if you've played a Telltale game, there's not a bunch of like action and shooting. It's all decision making and QTEs and branching paths and that thing. So, this is not a looter shooter. It branches away from Borderlands, 1, 2, 3, and pre-sequel. So I think a lot of people didn't play it. I did not. I think, Andrew, you referenced it earlier.
I own it, but I've never played it.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you the plot beats from this and where it is relevant and when it matters. So This story is funny because it stars some Hyperion employees that are trying to buy a vault key. Like, these are not treasure hunters. They are not heroes. They're at best low-level con artists. So they want to go buy a vault key, but they end up getting a fake. Oh, and also the $10 million they were spending on the vault key is absolutely stolen from Hyperion. So the two characters that we follow are Reese and Vaughn, which Reese is voiced by Troy Baker and Vaughn is voiced by Chris Hardwick. So like, just to give you like some bigger names. Also Laura Bailey and Patrick Warburton voice some characters in this story as well. So like big names.
Man,
so Reese,
Telltale Games, R.I.P.
Man, R.I.P.
So Reese is kind of like the main guy we're going to follow here because he kind of has some staying power in the story. They try to do a crime. They don't do the crime. They end up running around. Anyway, plot reasons, Reese ends up jabbing this like smart USB into his brain to get like information of where the vault is or something like that. And he ends up uploading a copy of Handsome Jack AI into his head. It is a copy of the AI version of Handsome Jack is now stuck in his brain. Seems like a problem. So he doesn't find the vault's location, but he does find out that there is some tech that will let them find that vault. Oh, also this vault is a special vault. It's called Vault of the Traveler because it constantly moves around. Why wouldn't we have something like this? Of course we have something like this. They venture out and they run into some old characters. So they run into Athena the Gladiator, and we find out that like the good guys had captured her. So this aligns back with the pre-sequel story where it ends with her being captured, because we actually see like the scene where Brick like busts into the room and like form tackles her through like a 3rd story window, and that's how they capture her. It's a whole like cinematic thing. Again, cut away from this like Tales from the Borderlands. It catches us up with the prequel. So again, we find Athena. This is where like she is telling her story back in the prequel. She's at the firing squad. This also then shows that her death was prevented by a guardian. So one of those Iridian, creatures that was made, known as the Watcher, which is like one of the big famous ones. And this guardian known as the Watcher, and again, this is all from the pre-sequel. Like this is pre-sequel content that just fits right in here. Is that this guardian like stops the bullets from hitting what's her face, Athena, and says a war is coming, which is like the warning of Borderlands 3. So an image of that guardian is image 15. We don't know the guardian's name other than we call it the Watcher because that's, I guess, what it's known as.
Okay.
It's like
so
a
back
bird
in the Telltale
kind
game,
of thing, right? I'm looking at that right.
It kind of looks like a bird. Everything is like a really elongated bird, insect, and armor.
These are the smallest images
I know they're not great
could have
size.
possibly found.
Yeah, it's fine. People are looking at these on their phone. Okay, back in the Telltale game. So protagonist Reese and Vaughn are forced to go find the last MacGuffin. You got to find the MacGuffin of the moving vault, and they got to find it on the Hyperion ship that is just constantly floating around Pandora. They end up uploading Jack's AI into the ship by accident. And that's not a good thing.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you know how that goes.
Just trip and fall into a USB port.
Yeah, and got it right the first time, which is wild.
Crazy.
Also, while the ship is like going down, because I think that's what Jack's AI does to it, Reese ends up grabbing the deeds of ownership of the Atlas Corporation from Jack's old office. This will be important later. So they release the Vault's monster. They defeat it with the power of friendship because it's a Telltale game and it's not like real combat. And then they venture inside. As they get inside and open the chest, we see the characters that open the chest disappear. So we don't actually get a resolution for what happened when they opened the chest, if that ever happened. Also, it's worth noting that 7 years after Borderlands 2, and it plugs right into the story here, that we got we got more Borderlands DLC for, again, a 7-year-old game, which is wild. which
Yeah.
kind of tells you like they had to sneak some lore in there.
Yeah.
And it was called Commander Lilith and the Fight for Sanctuary. But like again, it fits chronologically right here. So like a year, I guess at this point, a year or two out of where we are in the continuity. And again, reminder, at the end of Borderlands 2, it ended with like, oh shit, there's a bunch of vaults in the universe.
Sure.
This DLC follows Lilith as she has to defend. She defends the city of Sanctuary on Pandora, which is like where people live, against this evil group. And in the end, that map that they were looking at gets destroyed somehow. Plot. And Lilith goes, that's like, oh, it's a bummer that's gone, but I feel connected to what that map was sharing. Basically, like, we don't need the map. The map's in us the whole time.
Yeah.
Sure.
The real map is the friends we made along the way.
Real map is the friends we made along the way. Let's get to Borderlands 3. So this is approximately a year or so out from like where the current story is. Came out in 2019.
Okay.
So remember me talking about the first Vault Hunter, Typhon de Leon,
Yeah.
I do.
and how he had twins that he had to raise?
Yeah,
I
Tom
do.
from MySpace. He
Tom from MySpace. It is now super relevant that we talk about Typhon de Leon's twins.
Okay.
So they're grown up now because that was like 20, 30 years ago.
Sure.
They are grown up. They escape from wherever Typhon had been hanging out. And they make it to Pandora because that's where all the shit's happening. And they're going to start a cult called the Children of the Vault. So Image 16 is Troy and Tyreen, which also, they're both sirens. So they've got some... Yeah. And if you might remember, there was the whole lore of like, there's only so many sirens, and every siren that's been
men
born is
can't
a
be
woman.
sirens.
Men can't be sirens in this universe. Well, you can't see it from this picture, but Troy's missing his right arm because they were born
It's
as
because
conjoined.
this image is small as shit.
Yeah, you're right. all eight pixels on that image.
Yeah.
Troy and Tyreen were born as conjoined twins.
Oh,
So-
That's kind of cool.
So, yep, they were ultimately separated at one point. Troy's got a bionic arm. They have the same shared siren power, and it is to leech powers from other people.
They just look so villainous. Like there was no
Yeah.
chance for them. Like they're
Yeah.
like they were born to be villains. They look so shady.
Yes.
Correct. I've taken all the feedback of small pictures with a grain of salt. This next one's going to be pretty tough because it's all the characters that you get to play as, and it's a very small image.
This image is nothing. This image
nothing.
is just a couple colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get to meet the Vault Hunters in Borderlands 3. So they are all hired by Lilith to defend Pandora. That's the whole thing. So yeah, they're Vault Hunters, but they're hired by Lilith and yada yada. So we get 4 characters. I did not play Borderlands 3, but I know a good bit about these 4. We have Amara, the Siren. She is the blob to the left. We have Zane, the Operative. He is 2 from the right. We have Flack, spelled FL4K, the Beastmaster. And he's the big guy in the middle. Yeah, there's a bigger version in the notes doc. That works.
You're welcome.
And then Mose, the Gunner, is to the far right there. Image 17 and the Imgur. To talk about them briefly, Amara, the Siren. All sirens
I'm
have
playing
siren
as Amara
powers.
in my game.
Yeah. Siren powers, but also fists is what Amara has. Like a lot of the sirens, when you activate their siren abilities, they get like spectral wings behind them. Amara gets fists, and fists can be used to punch.
That's cool.
Fists can be used to pick up people, to restrain them, to slap them. It's all pretty cool.
Sweet.
Going across here, Flack is the Beastmaster, so his skill trees are like, what beasts do you summon? What do they do? Because there's like 3 different ones you can summon. He's also a robot. He's super cool. I love that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Zane, the Operative. This is, again, it's your Soldier 76 insert, kind of. He can create duplicates of himself. Like he can like flash in and out of places, I think. I don't think he gets a turret like the other ones, but his intro video shows him cheersing a duplicate of himself, which is kind of cool.
It's cool. He's an echo fighter.
He's an Echo Fighter.
Yeah.
Mose is Diva. Mose can summon a mech.
Got it.
Hell yeah, brother.
Mose summons mech. Mech does stuff. Their whole goal is they are in search of the vault map in hopes to stop the twins. Again, we also see that the twins have a leech power, which we don't fully see until they use it on Lilith one time, and it's not cool because they get Lilith's super siren abilities to like teleport and energy project and basically all the things we've been counting on our NPC friend Lilith to do for us all the time. They now can just teleport in and out of scenes all the time, and
they're like Rogue, where like they just need to do it one time and they just get the power.
absolutely. Yep.
I guess that isn't like Rogue, but you get it.
Yeah.
Well, if Rogue kills someone doing it, she keeps it forever.
It's
Granted,
like
they
morph.
don't kill.
Morph is what you were looking for.
Morph is what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah. And to be clear, they don't kill Lilith, but they do get all of Lilith's powers. She no longer has siren powers, which is the thing that makes her cool.
She's just a lame normie.
Just a normie now. So in this story, I'd said before, like sometimes you work for the different corporations. We end up becoming allies with the Atlas Corporation. They end up bankrolling us for a while because we find out from Tales from the Borderlands, Reese, who grabbed that like certificate of ownership of the Atlas Corporation off of the Hyperion satellite that Handsome Jack had. He owns the Atlas Corporation now because he has that piece of paper. So he is now like, he goes from being like a middling level of, like employee for this corporation to I own the Atlas Corporation.
That's so silly.
It's pretty funny. So we also reconnect with the siren from Borderlands 2, Maya, who now has an apprentice named Ava. So she's apprenticing this other young siren, which is very cool. Oh, also, what's his name? Troy? Is that
Troy Baker?
Name? Troy, not Troy Baker. Troy, the evil siren twin, he shows up and leeches Myra to death right in front of us.
Oh, no.
So Maya, not Myra. Maya from Borderlands 2 dies right in front of us.
Damn.
Beans.
Which is just a huge bummer.
Yeah.
Because everyone loves Maya. And it's one of those situations where there's a scene where you kill this like big monster, like kind of like a vault defending monster. And right as it's done, Troy and his sister Tyreen, Troy and Tyreen show up and like leech the monster as it's dying. They're like, we have that power now. See you later. And just like bamf out of the scene. And suddenly you're like, oh, we have to double tap everything from here on out. That's
cool.
A bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they leech Maya to death. They get her powers, which is a huge bummer. We chase them for a while and we get help from our old friend, Dr. Tanis. Oh, until she's kidnapped. Dr. Tanis is kidnapped again. When we find her, not only do we find out that she's alive, she's being used to power a machine because, Dr. Tanis is a siren.
Yeah.
We had no idea. Yeah, so flashback real quick. In Borderlands 2, we killed Handsome Jack's daughter, Angel, because she was like, you gotta kill me. Like, I can't live anymore. And it turns out when she died, her powers jumped to a willing host. And that willing host was Dr. Tanis. And so Image 18 is Dr. Tanis, who is not labeled as a scientist, but labeled as a sirentologist now,
that's pretty good. It's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so she's got like siren powers. She's got wings and can fly, and it's all pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So story continues. We kill Troy. We get his ass. We also get a tease that he could come back in Borderlands 4, but we kill his ass. When we kill him, it lets Ava, that like apprentice of Maya, absorb Maya's siren powers. And so like we'll probably get Ava as a playable character in Borderlands 4 as a new siren. And then Tyreen does the thing we've been waiting for since the beginning. She monologues and tells us her whole story of what she's going to do.
Perfect.
Her plan is to... You guys remember that very first vault that had the destroyer in it, and then we shoved the destroyer back into the vault?
The 200-year one, right?
Yeah, every 200 years. She's going to find a way to open it up, get that destroyer out, and then leech the power of that destroyer to be invincible forever.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah, it's a real choice. She tells us all of this plot, and as it happens... we end up like getting away, and their dad, Typhon, the first Vault Hunter, basically like swoops us away to his hideout and gives us the plot keys to stop her. and is like, you got to stop my daughter. She's nuts. Oh, wait, she's now in the room and she kills him.
Huh?
So,
Oopsie daisy.
because she can still teleport into places because she has Lilith's powers.
Yeah.
She merges with the Destroyer and becomes Tyreen the Destroyer, which is just the mobile Destroyer, but she is like an avatar sticking out of it. And
Oh, okay. It looks like a little
she's-
bug in this, like a big mantis.
she like is exploding out of it.
Okay.
It's a real like Resident Evil merging together with a bigger thing kind of thing. So the Destroyer is invincible. Her fleshy body is not. And so we shoot her a whole bunch and she dies. So she dies. I don't know if the Destroyer does. I don't know. I didn't play this one and didn't catch that. But the game ends with Lilith gets her powers back. And there is that moon that's up in the sky that has been like over harvested and really, yeah, that's a good picture of Tyreen the Destroyer. There's the moon, the Elpis moon that's circling Pandora has been compromised for a while. Like it's been over harvested, and that moon is going to like crash into Pandora. And so Lilith, when she gets her powers back, does the whole like looks upward and says, I know what we have to do. And like flies up into the moon. And you see like her big, they call her, I think, Firehawk. Her big, like her emblem fills the sky and her and the moon just disappear.
She does an Iron Man, or she does an Iron Man in Avengers 1.
Yeah, she absolutely does that.
Cool.
So there are some DLCs.
Sure.
Some relevant, some not.
Okay.
As they tend to go.
Yeah.
First one is Handsome Jackpot. So Moxie wants to take down what's left of Handsome Jack's regime, which is just a bunch of clones. And so you team up with that original clone of Handsome Jack, who we met in the pre-sequel, who now goes by an actual name that I forget and it's not relevant. You fight a bunch of like 80s themed villains with like big hair and radical attitudes.
That's fun.
Neat.
Yeah, it's fun. The next one is Guns, Love, and Tentacles. That is, it is a Lovecraft/love story between Sir Hammerlock, who's an NPC from earlier. He's the guy who's sisters with the Baroness, and Wainwright Jacobs, who is like the old-timey creator of the Jacobs brand. He's just this like old man who made the Jacobs brand guns. And it's like you fight monsters, and in the end, they have a wedding ceremony, and the eldritch monsters lair that you destroy.
Cool.
Sure.
Fun.
Bounty of Blood, another DLC. Western-themed DLC where you hunt down evil outlaws.
Gotta have a cowboy one.
Gotta have a cowboy one. Here's your outlaws. Go get them. The last DLC from Borderlands 3 was known as Psycho Krieg and the Fantastic Fustercluck. So
Great.
that is the name. I think it's through the perspective of Dr. Tannis, but it's an exploration into the psyche of Krieg, the psycho from Borderlands 2, the playable one who just like screams a lot. And they do a magic school bus into Krieg's brain because they want to like study how a psycho thinks. And the whole thing with this DLC is that we find out that like Krieg, who is a crazed psycho man, actually has like a lot of nuance to him and emotions. Yeah. And everything that plays out in his brain has a bunch of like, it shows he had a soft spot and like a love for Maya, the siren that died in the last game in Borderlands 3. So like, it just shows like, it's again another like very surprise emotional story in Borderlands where they're like, you didn't expect this, did you? Look at that. He cares.
I wonder if this at the time was a nod to Psychonauts, because that's like the core
very
mechanic
similar.
of Psychonauts. Yeah.
Very similar. I can see that. Cool. So let's get to the present day, 2022, new tales from the Borderlands. Spoiler alert. I did not catch anything in this story that is like, oh, and that sets up this, and that sets up, but I'm sure it does. I'm sure that something in here is like future MacGuffin for Borderlands 4. But again, this is like, this is another, like, it's not Vault Hunters we're following, it's normal ass people. And so this Telltale game follows a mega corporation war between the Atlas, owned by Reese, and another group called TDR, which makes guns. And so we're still looking for vaults, but these characters aren't vault hunters. They're just like people with jobs. Like one of them runs a frozen yogurt place. And yeah, it's a whole thing. So the big thing here is like one of them is working on a technology that can help heal people, like a gun that kind of heals people. And so they find MacGuffins, as you do, and they end up juicing a gun not just to be a gun that can heal people, but like can bring people back to life. And so the big bad gets control of that technology and does its whole thing. And effectively, the big bad, which I forget which corporation, I think they work for TDR, reaches out to all the other corporations and is like, you're going to yield to me because I have a gun that brings people back to life.
Oh.
And if that's not scary, you haven't let me say the other half of my sentence, which I've messed with the technology to repeatedly kill people and bring them back to life as a form of torture forever. And so you're going to yield to me. I have everything here. And they defeat the big bad through the power of friendship or whatever. And the ending is that alien technology that like let them do this weird science is like freed back out into the universe. And who knows what'll happen next? But like this all powerful energy being technology that was going to create a gun that was going to Lazarus people forever is suddenly like released and not captured in a gun. And that gets us caught up. The only games yet to come out, again, Borderlands 4 has been teased for 2025 with no set date that I know of. And there's also like a Borderlands pinball in place. And there was a Borderlands like mobile game. And that doesn't
Didn't they do a full release of the Tiny Tina D&D thing a couple years ago? I feel like I remember seeing that. It was like another like CPRG or CRPG Diablo clone.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I know there's been a lot of other things. Like these are the main beats. Yeah. But yeah, that gets you caught up. I mean, cool. You know, just like my thoughts after going through this, that I loved Borderlands 2 a lot. And there is a pretty good chance that if Borderlands 4 lands at a time that I am not immersed in a different game, I'm about to be the person that tries to Diablo 3 this into my friendships again. Now, Diablo 3, for those listening, was a game that the three of us on this call bought and played less than 6 times.
I went back and finished it. To be clear, I have 60 hours in Diablo 3 because I realized during the pandemic you can play video games when you sit on calls for work.
Couldn't have been me.
I opened that game one time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was the couch co-op that did us that did us dirty. But I think what I'm getting at is that if Fallout 4, there's never a good Fallout game that comes out again. If Borderlands 4 comes out and it looks like it's going to be good and the reviews are good about the character creation and they kind of eliminate maybe some of the clunky menuing, I will be insufferable. I will be asking you, my friends, to play this game with me. Just because I know how much I enjoyed character customization and like partying up in a group of 4 to like, there's vehicles and you're exploring and like there's
we
guns
can ask other people,
fun.
Matt. It's okay.
I mean, look, I'll try anything once.
I think I'm gonna go out on a limb and say you might like it if it's good, and I'll hold that. But yeah,
you guys want to all go play Monster Hunter after this?
No. That's another game.
Remember when I made you all buy Monster Hunter?
Okay, critique with Monster Hunter. I shouldn't have to press buttons in a rhythmic pattern to do attacks.
It's like a fighting game.
Famously, I play a ton of those. That's not Smash Brothers.
Also fair.
Anyway, that's Borderlands. That's the story. That's where we go from here. I think we're going to see bad guy Troy back again. Obviously, like we're setting up, Reese still has Atlas. We'll see what happens with that. Lilith is still alive. Probably going to see Lilith again. She's kind of become the showrunner for this whole thing. But yeah, what'd you guys think?
It's fine. It's story-wise, like it's interesting enough. I don't feel like it is necessarily like unique or like there's a lot going on that I don't feel like I could get elsewhere. But it does a good job of setting up like an aesthetic. And I do like very much that it doesn't take itself seriously.
Right.
Because like as soon as you were like ancient alien civilization, I was like, oh God, what have they done? Like I'm not. But it doesn't. I think the way that the story that they're telling is like, I'm not that into, but I do appreciate the way that they're telling it. It's very like character centric, and they haven't like got lost in their own sauce, so to speak, from what I can tell. So yeah, hats off to you, Gearbox.
Yeah. I mean, I see a world where I was into this type of video game and I got really into Borderlands. The story is kind of plot soup, and it's a fine story. Like there's nothing wrong with it, but I don't know that it's particularly for me. I think Borderlands looks cool. I love let me start that over. I love a video game that really commits to an aesthetic. And I think Borderland has done that very, very well. And I think that that's really cool. And I do think it's cool that they have, like you said, created a story-centric plot, or I'm sorry, a character-centric plot and not a MacGuffin-centric plot. The things that are from new games to tie in old games feel more natural than other examples we've done on flavor text before. So yeah, I mean, this is cool. I don't think that I will ever come back on Borderlands. Like I said, I'll watch the movie when it's on Tubi. I'm sure the internet will get mad when they replace the Lilith voice actress with Kate Blanchett. And that's pretty much what I got.
Is that Kate Blanchett is Lilith in the movie, right?
Kate Blanchett is Lilith. Kevin Hart is Roland. And I forget what Jamie Lee Curtis's character actually plays as. She's like she's one of the evil corporation folk. She actually has like a direct tie to, there's a character that she is.
Sure.
She's not Tannis.
I don't think she's Tannis. She could be Tannis. I don't think she's Tannis. And I could not be troubled to figure it out, and so I don't have the answer.
She is Tannis.
She is Tannis. What a bummer, because Tannis is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis is doing her best.
She's out there.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to Debate This. You can follow along with the arguments on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Debate This Cast, or on our website at debatethiscast.com. And hey, if you want to commission your own flavor text like our buddy Sharkbait did, head on over to patreon.com/debatethiscast. A one-time payment of $60 will allow you to dictate whatever series or media or religious doctrine, which we made part of the copy when we wrote this last, to talk about next. Until next time, I'm Todd Thomas.
I'm Matt, Mechromancer. I hardly know her. Cole.
And I'm Andrew, always a lighthouse, always a siren. Henderson.
And we're saying thanks for debating with us. And if you think we're wrong, you can come fight us behind the swing sets, nerds.